Let me start with what UAE did over the last years when it comes to reducing our carbon footprint. As we know, UAE was the first nation in this region that announced ambitious renewable energy programs. I'm speaking about 2006, 2007, when we, at that time, when we put the 7% target for the UAE, for the renewable energy in the UAE. After that, it evolves to become a 24% target, and this is what we are heading in the next couple of years. UAE have a mix of clean energy sources that starts with the nuclear energy that is providing an important part of our renewable clean
which we heard earlier today from His Excellency
Yes.
Al Ahmadi, doing great work, amazing developments there.
So the nuclear really plays a very important role in the reduction of our carbon footprint. Besides that, we have almost 6 gigawatts of solar energy, almost half of it operational, and the other half in the way that and will be operational in the next few months. So this really puts the UAE in the forefront of clean energy and really have a significant impact on our carbon footprint. Besides that, we are doing also different activities, and I'm proud to say that UAE is in the forefront of adopting sustainability and carbon reduction technologies. We were the first who built the carbon capture project, Riyadh, where we are capturing 800,000 tons of CO2. We are also the first nation in the region that is building waste to energy projects. In fact, we have 2 waste to energy projects that are under construction. One of them will start operation soon, maybe early this year, and the other one will start over the next years. So all this put UAE in a very good position when it comes to really thinking and having an idea on what needs to be done to reduce further our carbon footprint and ultimately to achieve the net zero by 2050. Besides that, it's very important also to highlight that in the UAE, we are doing a lot when it comes to clean energy projects, but also we are doing a lot in reducing our carbon footprint in our industries and in our oil and gas sector. The UAE, the carbon footprint of the barrel produced in the UAE, it has the lowest carbon footprint. And we also the massive announcements by ADNOC. First of all, we had announcement of the carbon capture project, where we have the current capacity of 800,000 tons that will grow up by 500% to reach around 5 million tons of carbon dioxide capturing every year. Another important project also, the interlink of the electrical connection of all our offshore production hubs. It will be connected to the onshore, and this itself will allow us to use clean energy in all our operations, whether onshore or offshore in the UAE. I'm talking about the oil and gas consumption. This is put UAE in the forefront and make us ready to further reduce our carbon footprint toward the net zero by 2050.
I mean, clearly, Hatem, there is some fundamental pillars in which this net zero roadmap can be built. I'm wondering, from your perspective, how can we leverage greater coordination within the 7 Emirates that make up the UAE? I know we have talked before about how useful it would be to have a UAE-wide natural gas grid, for example. Your thoughts on how the region, as the country, as in all of its parts, can leverage in order to get to that net zero?
Thanks, Sean. And I just want to say that I'm glad that at the beginning of the forum, we had an activist give a few words about this, which I hope we would see more of this in the future. We don't want this forum to be a one-sided forum.
Absolutely.
oil and gas industry rather than the whole thing. Because at the end of the day, the solution or the way to net zero involves everybody, not just the oil and gas sector or the environmentalists. On your question about the coordination between the different emirates on achieving net zero. Now, of course,
and sectors, obviously, but yes, the whole, not just ADNOC and Abu Dhabi, but actually across the whole the country.
Yeah. Let me step back to the question itself of what is net zero.
Yeah.
If you ask different people in the street what's net zero, the few that answer you tell you that they have heard of the expression will have completely different answers from each other. Some think that net zero is that all power generation is generated from clean energy, when in reality, net zero for a country means that the whole country is producing net zero carbon emissions, which means all of the transportation sector, all of the industrial sector, all of the power sector, everything that uses energy at the end is netted out to zero. And it's a really a formidable challenge for any country, no matter how advanced it is, to achieve this. And yes, we've heard quite a few countries in the world, including the UAE, stating their intention to reach net zero by 2050. But we're yet to see the roadmap to achieving this for any of these countries, including the most advanced Western countries in Europe or something in this arena. So to achieve that, it requires everybody's work, but it also requires a huge action plan and roadmap to achieve this. And we're yet to see, of course, the details of this for the UAE, never mind the rest of the world also. So to achieve that, of course, it requires the collaboration between all of the energy players within the country and all of the sectors within the country that you consume energy. It's not just the production of energy, but it's more really the consumption of energy. So Sharjah National...
I mean, addressing that point that I made in the introduction, the idea of a nationwide gas grid. I mean, you're building an underground natural gas storage in Sharjah that could be leveraged and utilized in other parts of the country. I mean...
Yes, of course. Gas is going to be a main transition player in the on the way to achieving net zero, and of course making hydrogen to replace gas eventually at some time in the future is part of the roadmap, and all of the infrastructure that's required to achieve that will have to play a role, including gas storage, because at the end of the day, to be able to deliver energy reliably 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you must have all kinds of infrastructure to achieve that delivery, including gas storage, energy storage, hydrogen storage, and the infrastructure to transport it, and the infrastructure to consume it. And that is everyone to participate in this.
Your Excellency, we saw at the beginning of this year or the end of last year, the UAE government announcing, I think it was 40 new pieces of legislation, 40 new laws, big changes happening in the country. In the context of the march towards net zero, and I'm wondering, what are the sacred cows, if you like, what are the big gestures that the country can make moving towards COP27, 28 that will really signal a firm commitment? Do you have any in plans, for example, lifting all subsidies on power and water, that type of thing?
I would like to highlight that the UAE are already in a good position in order to see what needs to be implemented to achieve the net zero. And this is the effort that will need all the stakeholders to be together. And this is what we have today under the umbrella and leadership of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. We have the representatives of all the stakeholders that will work together on the plan. So we announced our net zero. Immediately after that, we've seen different announcements happening, and on itself, from the ministry side, we announced our roadmap for the hydrogen in the UAE. And hydrogen is envisaged to be a very important element that will allow the UAE to reduce the carbon footprint. So hydrogen can be used as a substitute of natural gas in different ways. It can be used for the industry to create different products. Also, it can be used as a fuel in the natural gas mix. The one comment I want to do here about the gas network in the UAE, we have nationwide natural gas network, so that the gas produced in ADNOC, southwest of UAE, of Abu Dhabi Emirates, is being used also in Fujairah, the north of the UAE, in the eastern coast of UAE. So UAE has very good infrastructure when it comes to electrical interconnection, gas interconnection, and also water interconnection.
So what are the big next steps? I mean, hydrogen is a bit of a time journey to when it's really going to move the dial. In the meantime, obviously we've got the nuclear. We had Mr. His Al-Mahdi on earlier. We've got the sort of curtailment in terms of maybe on the consumption side, the decarbonization of ADNOC and so forth. What's the next big item, the next big piece that in hosting COP28, the eyes of the world will go, oh yeah, UAE, they really made a move on something X since they got this COP opportunity?
At the end of the day, it's a plan for 2050, and the plan has to have in mind this long term 2050, and because technology today doesn't exist, and nobody have clear plan on what needs to be done in order to achieve 2050. Immediately, the low-hanging fruits for us is to successfully operate our nuclear plants. This will have a huge impact on our carbon footprint, expand further on our renewable energy program, expand further in our waste to energy plan. All this together will have significant impact. However, going beyond that need to be studied very well. We are in discussion we have discussion with different entities in the UAE, the production of hydrogen and export of hydrogen. However, at this stage, I repeat, nobody has clear plan on what needs to be done.
What about the point I mentioned, lifting subsidy on power and water consumption at a consumer level, on a corporate level?
But this is I would say is not accurate entirely, because
not entirely, but it's still there.
Most of the segments, so we don't have subsidy for gas. We don't have subsidy on natural gas.
No, but on power consumption.
We don't have, and most of our power consumption in the UAE is not subsidized. So okay. Just a small segment that probably has subsidies, but most of the consumption in the UAE doesn't have subsidy. But to be accurate, it's still the UAE without subsidy, the price is very affordable, very competitive, because we don't have taxes on this consumption. This what,
and that's coming, right?
I cannot answer this, but today our price, most of the consumption that we have.
The right answer is no, by the way, but that's I think all things are possible now. Hatem, your thoughts on on the point of hydrogen, and we have a question in the chat room. Can the ministry do much to help mandate UAE green hydrogen as cost competitive? Because really the blue hydrogen idea is there. Clearly there's gas, there's an idea, but to make green hydrogen even economically viable, it's possibly going to need some heavy lifting on policy. Your thoughts on that?
Both green hydrogen and blue hydrogen are going to be the way of the future. But today, they are not competitive with gas. For blue hydrogen, for example, you are making it from gas. So all of the process downstream of the gas to turn the gas into blue hydrogen is extra cost. For green hydrogen, it requires two things to make it competitive. The capital cost of making green hydrogen is very intensive. But also at the same time, you need power to make electrical power to make green hydrogen. And you need very cheap electrical power to make it. So if you look at today's prices, for example, at the moment, I'm a gas person, so I'm going to use the million BTU as the unit of energy, which is the common price. Today, let's ignore today's prices, spot prices for gas, but historic prices have been in the range of $10 to $15 per million BTU. For green hydrogen, today's price is about $40. And for blue hydrogen, it's the gas price plus 7. So we really have to make significant advancement in the technology to make green hydrogen affordable. And I think it's doable. I think we are going to get there, and we probably might be able to get there within 10 years. We've seen how much solar energy has reduced in price over the years. More than 85% reduction in the price. So green hydrogen should probably follow suit and achieve that. Primarily also because it is using clean energy or solar energy to do that. The $40 price for green hydrogen is based on a 6 cent per kilowatt hour price. But we've seen in Abu Dhabi being able to achieve less than 1.5 cents. If this price can be achieved everywhere, and even achieve lower price, hopefully with time, that would significantly reduce the bill. Also, the capital cost for making green hydrogen is about $18 per million BTU, and it's primarily because the electrodes are very expensive and they have less than a 5-year life. So that technology has to be significantly improved, where you like double the lifetime of the electrodes, half the cost of them. Eventually, green hydrogen could easily become less than $15 or maybe even less than $10 eventually when you get there.
Well, let's just give His Excellency, the last word on that point. Your Excellency, will the UAE provide subsidized electricity to make UAE green hydrogen cost effective? I mean, you were one of the pioneers in developing the solar, which started out being totally out of the money and over 10 years became the most cost competitive form of power supply in the UAE, in the world nearly. What about hydrogen, green hydrogen? Is the government ready to subsidize the electricity for making green hydrogen work?
I'll mention my opinion, Sina. I will not mention the UAE opinion. I think it took us a long time to go away from subsidy. And I don't think it's wise to start thinking again, going to subsidy. Technology, we need to support R&D. We need to support creating the legal infrastructure to make the projects happen. But the projects need to prove itself. The project needs to be economical. It needs to prove its visibility in order to happen. I think subsidies are from the past, and we need to go away from it, and we need to think about more sustainable measures and schemes to support green projects to happen other than subsidies.
Well, maybe subsidy is the wrong word. I mean, in terms of investment, we've seen like the US government gave $500 million to Elon Musk at the beginning of Tesla's development, and that was an investment into technology development, I suppose. But listen, we have to wrap it up there. Your Excellency Yusuf Ahmed Al Ali, really great to have your insights today. And Hatem Al Moussa, CEO of Sharjah National Oil Corporation, thank you so much.